Our organisation exists in what we call the grey space in between business and the arts. And what we try to do is develop connections, resources and intelligence around that grey space. And typically that manifests in things like art sponsorship, in commissioning of artists and arts organisations, in corporate social responsibility activities, and then in events or bespoke events that may involve lots of different types of artists and creatives of all types in Ireland and overseas. The arts sector in Ireland exists, right, on one side it's the not-for-profit arts, and then on the other side there's the highly commercial arts like the film sector and the music industry, which have established large models around them, industries, and many people working in them in this country. But across that spectrum, there's activity at every single stage in people's careers, from emerging artists that leave college and are entering into the workforce all the way through to some of our most advanced and successful artists in the country. Typically, we work in a space that is either in the centre of that spectrum or slightly to either side of the centre. So when we talk about sponsorship of arts and cultural organisations and entities, we're typically on the more commercial side, where large audiences exist, where people are engaged with those activities. And then when we look at corporate social responsibility, donations and grants, that's typically on the not-for-profit side, where the need for finances is much more clear and evident because the funding sources aren't necessarily there. I've been in and around the arts industry for the guts of 15 to 20 years now, where I've been able to see the cycles that exist. So there are some areas that perform really, really well in an upward economy. And then as things get tougher, you start to see the chinks. In 2006 and 2007, you could start to see the impact of just sentiment. And then as the financial crisis unfolded, you could see rapidly the impact, not just on the art sector, but the entire not-for-profit sector in Ireland. Over the course of about a year or two, about 40% of revenue that arts and cultural organisations may have disappeared. Across the not-for-profit sector, that was quite common. And we saw a huge loss of actual just entities, like companies and people working in the space in Ireland. Either they ceased to exist or they emigrated and moved off to different countries. So between the period 2007-8 up until like the 2013-14, I think we were faced with a critical kind of exodus of talent. And we're now rebuilding that in a way. People are returning. Projects and ambition of our organisations is starting to increase. They went through a phase of retraction and trying to consolidate and make sure that they survived for a period of time. But hopefully the economy is now picking up, and we're now seeing a more encouraging sponsorship environment, a more encouraging government environment, government funders. And ultimately that is also an indication of audiences and how much they purchase, the tickets that they buy, the artworks that they're likely to purchase, how they engage with artists and cultural organisations across the country. Art purchasing is one of the areas that we work in. So we help companies develop collections. We help lots of organisations commission art. When you're going through a substantial financial crisis, it becomes very difficult to justify certain types of spend. There are some organisations that will protect it and say this is part of what we do and we're committed to it. We have an ongoing cycle every year where we introduce new works into our collection. And that happens both in kind of formalised institutions and in the corporate sector. But I guess the reluctance in the recession was around being very open and transparent about spending lots of money. And I think that impacted all of the not-for-profit sector. And purchasing of artwork and sponsorship of arts were also impacted. So we saw a significant reduction in total levels of art sponsorship. The total volume of artworks that were being purchased dropped significantly. And all of that relates to the overall economic scenario, disposable spend or income from organisations and individuals, all the way through to just the appetite or sentiment towards what's appropriate. If we might be laying off people, or we might be going through a period of change and contraction of our business, is it appropriate for us to do all of these other things that might not be considered core to our model? But there are some organisations that this is actually core. We have a considerable history in purchasing or commissioning artists. We have ongoing events every year, and we need entertainment for those events, and we need to bring people in that are interesting, enlivening, and get audiences interested in what we do. People look at art sponsorship in some cases in a very specific way about how they attract a certain type of profile of either business peer or a type of audience that they're looking to engage. And even when the economy is down, generating business is what people want to do, and finding ways to do that is typically what art sponsorship and the sponsorship market in general is about. It's affinity, it's about interest, creating times for people to come together, talk, and hopefully build business relationships out of that. We have a membership base that is both in the arts and cultural sphere, then in the kind of the creative industries, and then in what might be perceived as the traditional industries of Ireland, so financial services, tourism, retail, and other areas. And we deal with people across all of those. So in each case, we work in different ways. On our corporate side, we advise sponsorship relationships. We secure, negotiate, review, assess, and exit on behalf of multiple companies. And in the creative industry space, we're kind of involved in the more kind of the mindset transfer. What's of relevance to people that might exist in a more commercial creative organization, and how they can work with artists to enhance creativity or work with businesses that are clients. And then on the arts and cultural side, we work with organizations and individuals that are looking to develop their business models and introduce new revenue streams to their organization. So on this side, it's capacity building, and that's capacity typically around revenue, strategy, development. On this side, it's about resources, mindset, and another type of key asset of the creative set in Ireland. And then on the other side, it's about, we have brand issues, or we have brand strategies, and we have business strategies and revenue focus. And we believe that arts and culture is the right space for us to invest some or all of our budget in attracting, retaining, developing relationships with either external or internal stakeholders. So we work across all of those three. Buying a piece of art is typically driven by a need straight away. So it might be a need that you have a building that's empty and it doesn't have a character, and you feel like you can introduce a character into it. So the initial need is actually we want to enliven our space or place, and we want to identify artworks that will fit the character of our organization, that might be aligned with our community investment, and we'd like to support artists in what they do. And El Goodbody is a good example of an established collection that is of Irish artists at particular points in their career. It's exhibited well, and the works are retained and preserved in the best possible way. That's one way that you can invest in art. When you do it in that considered way, you know that you have an asset that you are building for your organization. It will be retained if you invest wisely. So you're looking at the art market, you're looking at works and artists that are developing interesting bodies of work. The commissioning process has been informed by multiple people, not just someone walking in going, I really like that. They're considering the body of work and what's needed in a collection. That becomes collection management, and you move almost into care of an asset. Like if you had a financial asset, you would care for it, you would protect it, you would make sure that you invest it, or you spend time in ensuring that it grows. If you have an asset that is an artwork or a series of artworks and sculptures, you build that over time. It's an asset. People start to look after it. They start to look at gaps in it, and they try to make sure that they are representing different types of artists, different types of creatives within it, and that artwork engages the audiences that might be in their space. When you think sophisticatedly about that, you have multiple people that are likely involved in that decision. You've probably got someone from your facilities team, probably got someone from your marketing team, probably got someone from your staff and HR teams, and then you probably got an external person, like an artist or a curator is helping you to think around how you care and introduce new work in the most appropriate way. That becomes a comprehensive art investment committee in my world, where you have multiple skill sets that are all looking at the body of work and trying to develop an art collection that is robust, that it represents the organization and presents what you feel is the best type of image for your place or space. It's really common now to see the emerging tech companies to have art collections that are actually installations. They're artists that create in spaces around them. So the Facebooks of the world have a really advanced artist in residence program. You've got some of the other technical companies that actually are doing, well, we want to showcase street artists. This is our preferred medium. We want to bring the outside in. And Accenture in Dublin are heavily involved in looking at the urban environment and going, well, actually, we'd like to recreate that inside our building. And then you've got the more traditional art collection where people are looking at the galleries, looking at the studio spaces of Dublin, looking at the artwork that's being produced, looking at themes that are relevant. So it's very common to see themes appear and be produced in artworks and then go, well, actually, that makes a lot of sense for us to have that type of visual communication in our organisation. We believe in vibrancy. We believe in supporting creativity. We believe in making our environment and our office look exceptional. And we want people as they come in to have that impression about us, that we are thinking of our community. We're thinking of creativity. We want to showcase that on our walls. And then when you evolve into that type of thinking, then you are absolutely in the space of understanding how an artist can contribute to your organisation, to your team, to the overall brand that you present. The sponsorship market in Ireland has really only started to, in my opinion, professionalise substantially in the last 20 years or so. Sponsorship before that was more or less a transaction. People said, oh, we'll put money into this. People are much more sophisticated around their sponsorship spend in the country, analysing the audience that they want to reach, understanding how much they might have to invest in order to reach that audience, how they can shift tactics regularly or be consistent in their tactics to try and always be present with that audience. And that means that the industry as a whole has grown. So most research, so we undertake our own research in business to arts on an annual basis. We look at the other agencies that do their research, and the sponsorship market has consistently been growing in recent years. We expect the art sponsorship market to be worth somewhere between 25 and 30 million euro into 2020. And I think that the total market is probably in around the kind of the 150 million to 200 million. A lot of the budget is going to sports organisations. There are many rugby teams, there are many football teams, there are many GAA teams, and I think if you were to ask many people who the sponsors were of more than their home county or their home team, they'd probably struggle around identifying who the sponsors were. If you're looking to create unique experiences or unique types of sponsorships, I believe that the arts market is underrepresented in sponsorship terms. There are a couple of very significant sponsorships in the market. You've got the Bord Gáis Energy Theatre, you've got Virgin Media and the Dublin Film Festival, you've got Accenture and what they're doing with Women on Walls and inclusion and diversity. All of them are different sponsorships, but they're all very unique. So Accenture's activity relates to the diversity agenda. It relates to how they communicate their brand, what they want people to understand in terms of the respect and positioning of all people in their organisation, and how that they can bring visibility to people that might be underserved or underrepresented in their organisation and address that. And then look to external organisations like the Royal College of Surgeons and the Royal Irish Academy and go, well, we can actually help you in your agenda to bring visibility to all of your leaders, regardless of their gender, race, religion, and Women on Walls is a project that's a prime example in that space. Look at Bord Gáis Energy Theatre, really sophisticated sponsorship around a venue, looking at the consumer, the primary consumer of a venue, which is typically a female leader of a household who's responsible for most of the bills in that household, paying them, understanding that if I identify or I like this brand and they have another thing that will keep me for a long period of time, and that I might get preferential tickets to go and see the latest Broadway show. I might be able to get those tickets early or at a discounted rate, or I'm part of a club that will give free tickets to a venue. It's fitting the consumer. Bord Gáis Energy know that that consumer is interested in the proposition of the Bord Gáis Energy Theatre, and retaining that customer is a priority, in my opinion, for Bord Gáis Energy. And then if you look at Virgin Media and Dublin Film Festival, so Dublin Film Festival is an entity that's gone successfully from major sponsor to major sponsor over the last 10 years. And it's an established entity. It attracts some of the highest profile acting talent, both in this country and overseas. It's one of the highlights of the film festival network. And it's at a time in the year which is pretty good in terms of sponsorship. There's a gap there. So all of those different sponsorships are examples of how people are looking at a unique proposition in arts and culture and going, this absolutely makes sense to our target business to business or business to consumer relationship, and we are going to invest in them. And we will invest significant figures. We'll also invest in different ways of activating them every year, and we'll invest in the people that we're trying to attract. So it brings it back to the audience. They want people. They want those people to know who they are. They want them to be long-term relationships with their organization, and they want to protect them. They want to have them for as long as they can. I'm looking a lot at the word creativity at the moment. So if you look across most job specifications, regardless of what industry it is in Ireland, most people will contain the word creativity in the job specification. They are looking for people to come into the employment workforce with a creative mindset. Lateral thinkers. They don't just have the siloed approach to this is my job, that they're capable of change, development and innovation. And right at the forefront of all of those things, change, development and innovation, is the word creativity. You have to have that core attribute. That is the absolute expertise of artists, creatives, designers, all of the skills that bring visual communications and understanding, storytelling, that are absolutely required in people and modern workforces. I'm so interested in how that concept evolves, the importance of it to both corporate and cultural Ireland, and how we'll start to see more crossovers between creativity in a corporate context, where there might be artists and designers or staff that are creative in a workplace. But then you also have this massive intelligence base, this unbelievable resource and credentials of Ireland. Our artistic community is exceptional across every single media: music, filmmaking, art, theatre. In every single spectrum, they have some of the best people in the world working in those industries, winning the top prizes, being recognised all over the world for their activities. And the more that we encourage people on this side to collaborate, invest and support this, the more that it will grow, and the more that this realizes that they can work with the corporate sector and other organizations, the more creativity will cross over between the two organizations. I'm ultimately interested in bringing that creative mindset much more close into the business and arts grey space. Creativity is something that everyone would like. Now, how can we bring those two spheres together? Ireland is looked at as a creative country. People recognize that we are exceptional storytellers. We're good at being with people. We are artistic in how we approach many things. All of that is part of a core skill that we have. So the outlook can only be positive as a result of that, and we can capitalize on many other activities. But when you look at government focus and how it's evolving into creativity as being a focus, the corporate agenda and recruitment and retention of staff being about multiple skills and creativity being within that, that's another positive indication of where we're going. And then in terms of market and spend, I think there's always potential activities and environmental issues, Brexit being one, that could cause an impact on our economy. But in general, I think our economy is looking good. So if all of those things stack up, let's hope that investment by government, by corporate Ireland, and overall audiences increases, and the environment for arts and business is good. I'm really excited about the next couple of years. We produced a 5-year strategic plan for the first time in our organization's history. That might not sound like rocket science, but in the past it was always 3 years. We would look at 3-year cycles. We're now looking to 5 and even beyond 5-year cycles. We've recently announced a nationwide artist in residence program with different companies, all different types of companies, all different types of artists, all going and working together and then working with their communities. In El Goodbody, we're pioneers of that. Walker Solicitors were pioneers in the Docklands, but we're moving that out with Creative Ireland into Cork, Galway, and then lots of different pockets around the country. The idea is that creativity is actually something that people want. They want to be able to say, well, I am a creative person, and here's the things that I'm interested in and I can do. And this is another part of my personality. I want to bring that personality to my workforce, and I want to show what I'm capable of and how I can help an overall workforce advance and think differently about things. The future is very bright.